banks. One man, $160 billion, and nobody knew. In March 2021, 9 of the world's largest banks simultaneously discovered they were all exposed to the same man, and none of them had known about the others. Over $160 billion in stock positions secretly accumulated. One fund, 0 regulatory filings. This is macro scale, the truth behind the money. Bill Hwang had built what was technically a family office, a legal structure designed to manage personal wealth, exempt from the disclosures required of public hedge funds. But Hwang wasn't managing family savings. He was running a shadow empire. His firm, Archegos Capital Management, had $36 billion in actual capital. Through a financial instrument called a total return swap, he had leveraged that into $160 billion in concentrated stock bets. The banks knew their own piece. None knew the full picture. When prices started moving the wrong way, the entire structure collapsed in less than a week. More than $10 billion in losses evaporated across the global banking system, faster than anyone could stop it. The most dangerous trade in modern financial history had been hiding in plain sight, and the law had helped it stay hidden. To understand how Archegos hid $160 billion, you need to understand 2 things: family office law and total return swaps. After managing money at Tiger Management and later running his own hedge fund, which was shut down by the SEC for insider trading in 2012, Hwang reorganized his remaining capital as a family office. Under the Dodd-Frank Act, investment advisors managing only family money are exempt from SEC registration. No public disclosures, no position reporting, no oversight. Hwang used this exemption not to protect family wealth, but to rebuild a trading empire without anyone watching. His weapon of choice was the total return swap. Instead of buying stocks directly, which would require SEC reporting above 5% ownership, Hwang contracted with prime brokers at major banks. The bank bought the shares. Hwang paid a fee and received all gains and losses. He never owned the stocks on paper. He was invisible to the market. Each bank saw only its own swap contracts with Archegos. Goldman Sachs saw one set of positions. Morgan Stanley saw another. Credit Suisse saw another. No single institution saw the aggregate. And because Hwang's leverage reached 5 to 1 in some positions, his $36 billion firm was moving markets worth multiples of its actual size. It was legal. It was brilliant. And it was a ticking clock. By early 2021, Archegos held enormous concentrated positions in a handful of stocks: Viacom CBS, Discovery, GSX Takedo, Baidu, and several others. In some of these names, Hwang swaps represented more than 50% of the entire float. He wasn't just betting on these stocks, he was propping them up. As long as prices kept rising, the banks received their fees, and Hwang posted paper profits. Then, on March 23, 2021, Viacom CBS announced a new share offering. New shares meant dilution. The stock dropped 9% in a single session. Archegos needed to post additional collateral. The margin call had arrived. Behind the scenes, Hwang's team reportedly tried to negotiate with banks, asking them to hold, to give Archegos time to find liquidity. According to federal prosecutors, this is where the fraud escalated. Archegos allegedly made misrepresentations to banks about its liquidity, its other positions, and its risk exposure in an attempt to buy time and avoid the unraveling. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, sensing the risk, made a critical decision. They would begin liquidating their Archegos-linked positions immediately and quietly. They had figured out the aggregate problem. They moved first. Every hour they waited, the losses would grow. The clock finally had run out. On the morning of March 26, 2021, Goldman Sachs began dumping $6.6 billion in Archegos-linked stocks into the open market before most traders had finished their coffee. Morgan Stanley followed with $5 billion. The forced liquidations crashed Viacom CBS by 27% in a single day. Discovery fell 27%. GSX Takeda lost nearly 50% of its value in days. Billions in market value evaporated across 6 to 7 stocks in less than 72 hours. The banks that had moved first, Goldman and Morgan Stanley, escaped with minimal damage. The banks that hesitated were destroyed. Credit Suisse lost $5.5 billion. Nomura lost $2.9 billion. Morgan Stanley booked $911 million in losses despite moving early. Deutsche Bank, UBS, Mitsubishi UFJ all took hits. In total, more than $10 billion in bank losses in 1 week. It was the largest margin call collapse since the 2008 financial crisis. And here was the brutal irony. Had the banks shared information with each other, had any regulation required them to, the total exposure would have been visible. The collapse could have been managed. But because Archegos was a family office using swaps, no mechanism existed to force transparency. The system didn't just allow this, the system made it inevitable. April 2022. Bill Hwang indicted on racketeering, securities fraud, and market manipulation. Federal prosecutors alleged a coordinated scheme to inflate stock prices and deceive banks about Archegos' true exposure. Co-conspirator Patrick Halligan indicted alongside him. November 2024, Hwang sentenced to 18 years in federal prison, one of the harshest sentences ever for financial crime of this type. Halligan sentenced February 2025. Justice arrived. But has anything changed? Thousands of family offices manage $6 trillion in global assets, largely invisible to regulators. The SEC proposed new rules in 2023 requiring disclosure of large swap positions. The proposal remains stalled due to fierce industry opposition. The total return swap market is larger than ever. The structural conditions that enabled Archegos, family office exemption, derivative reporting opacity, fragmented prime brokerage oversight remain intact. Hwang goes to prison. The loophole that made him possible stays open. The next Archegos exists right now, and no regulator is required to see it. If this changed how you think about markets, share it with someone who should know.